Mr. Damigo is here. You have had some run-ins with some oath cuckers. Is that what we're here to do? some kind of boomer fake bikers with no step on snack shirts on and all that kind of stuff.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. Oh, I don't even know where to begin with this.
They're out there fighting for free speech, fam. Not yours though, right?
They sound really brave.
Yeah, they're very brave. What oath are they keeping? What are they keeping the oath to, like National Review Online, or like what's the oath?
I don't know. That's
who are they loyal to?
I don't really get it.
In all seriousness, I believe the oath that they imagine in their minds are upholding is the oath to protect the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
But not the Nationalization Act of, what was it, 1790, that said it was a white. Which law was that?
Yes, not the Naturalization Act of 1790 and then 1802.
Yeah. So, not that one though. That's not the oath we're working on.
Was it 1804? I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
Well, for those not familiar with who the Oath Keepers are, it's a group that's founded by apparently some guy named Stuart Rhodes, some boomer. And they kind of go around to
only a boomer
events.
only a boomer could be named Stuart Rhodes. Like, it's a terrible name. That's definitely a boomer. Like, that guy was born and he was 60 years old and a former hippie. But anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
And so these guys, I don't know a whole lot about them. I've kind of generally known who they were for a while. They're those guys that they fetishize the Constitution, a piece of paper that was crafted by a bunch of evil white nationalists. Strangely enough, they themselves have been kicking our members out of the events, and they, in fact, even Stuart Rhodes himself actually made some off-the-wall comment about talking about kicking my ass and kicking me out of the event, which was, by the way, a free speech event, and this was at Berkeley, the last event that was held there, and these guys, man, I don't get them. I don't get what they're doing. I don't even understand the dissonance there. I mean, it's definitely, boomer level, boomer tier. But this is, we had a guy who was actually at a free speech event just last weekend up in Oregon, and they actually kicked him out of the event. And this was a free speech event, and they did that to the white genocide guys as well. So, I mean,
I was just on with Horace the Avenger and Johnny Monoxide and a couple other guys yesterday. I don't know when the MP3 is coming out, but it was this week in White Genocide we talked about this as well, and Horace was equally disgusted with them and was like, they make themselves look like real assholes when they do this, frankly, and it also seems to run contrary to their purpose. As long as you're peacefully there expressing your message, and on what grounds do they do that? Do they kick you out? And
well, when this sort of thing happens, there's been a big backlash. Like when he actually was on YouTube talking about assaulting our members, which is strange because we were actually there defending other people at the Battle of Berkeley, and and they're going ahead and talking about using violence against us. There was a big backlash against them, and I don't know what they're doing because we have a massive amount of support from the alt-right who may not actually agree with us, but when we go to these events, they know who we are. And the rank and file are actually very much, supportive of us being there, and like the fact that we're there to, we may have our ideas. We want to talk to people who are there, even if they disagree with us. But they're actually glad we're there to help them out and protect them from Antifa. So these guys, there's another event that's actually coming up in a couple days here in Sacramento, and I have a good feeling they're going to be there, and I'm gonna make a little visit there and see what happens.
I can also testify to the truth of your statement about the rank and file of alt-right groups really loving us when we show up and like wanting to talk to us and like even if they're not just like, oh, because a lot of the events I've gone to that haven't been necessarily as much threat of immediate violence, but I do know, like, I've shown up places and immediately, like, if Proud Boys are there or other groups are there, they immediately run up and they all want to say hi and like shake my hand, and they all love what we do. So like this is definitely a thing. Like the alt-right, I mean, the rank and file are like way more on board. Like their leadership is the issue, where the leadership kind of doesn't want to get known for being this or that, because I guess they're afraid of negative media coverage and they're trying to build brands or maintain brands or whatever. But their rank and file are right on board. Like, and like you said, even if they're not quite as far along as we are, they don't quite agree on this or that, they still really like us, and they really like it when we show up, and they like to kind of feel cool by hanging out with us, if that makes sense,
Yeah,
because it seems it's like a little risky. It's a little bit more badass. So like, yeah,
So yeah, we're gonna hold their feet to the fire, because things are moving in such a direction that if they keep doing this, they're just gonna destroy themselves. And I'll happy to aid them in that process, because right now, most of the people on the alt-right are starting to realize that we aren't. There are bigger fish to fry than us, and that they aren't. Things are moving in our direction. Even many of the alt-right guys, it looks like there's going to be perhaps a Charlottesville 2.0.
Yeah.
So many of those people who are going to be there, this may be the first time where I think it's really been more explicit, because a lot of times a lot of alt-right members have been showing up to these events. But this event, I think, coming up is going to be the first event where you're going to have members of the alt-right and the alt-right standing side by side, which is going to be huge. It's going to be earth-shattering.
Yeah, that's going to be a very big deal, and it's going to be standing side by side, not just for free speech, but for substantive issues, right? So it's like free speech is what you say, but it's like, what's the actual content of that speech? So we're going to stand together on the content of the speech. Like, and I don't want to say more than that, because we haven't totally agreed on all the parameters of this, but we're going to stand together, and we're going to stand together for some of our issues. So it won't be that like the alt-right has a free speech thing and we show up. It's like we're having a thing and they're showing up. And that's going to be really great, and it's going to improve the kind of relationship between the two groups. And there'll probably be some people who won't be happy with it. The Oathkeepers would be one of them. Obviously, they're probably not going to be showing up, because the way I look at the Oathkeepers, I think the logic of it is that they see things like Antifa, and they're outraged by it because these people are flouting law and order, and they're flouting the ability of people to speak their minds, etc. But they don't want to get involved in anything. They've been thoroughly socialized as boomers, so they're thoroughly bought into the moral and intellectual zeitgeist of the post-war period, which is like humanism, anti-racism, equality, etc. So they, these one of these hallmarks of these boomer groups, Oathkeepers is one. We talked about Sons of Confederate Veterans yesterday. That's another. Their thing is like, oh, look, everybody, we all can unite around the Constitution. We all can unite around freedom. And, they feel like that's kind of how they stick it to the left, by showing them, like, literally it's this base black guy in a Trump hat, as is, like, we make fun of that all the time, but that's literally what they think. And if they're actually standing with us, who are open, white nationalists, openly pro-white, unapologetically so, then that kind of interrupts their ability to signal to the left, because that's really what they want to do. They want to signal to the left, look at us, we're actually better than you, you're the real racist. But when we're there, then it's difficult for them to do that, because like, no, you're standing next to people that are pro-white, Yeah. And but the thing is, what's the point in standing for free speech if you're not going to stand for pro-white speech, because that is the only kind of speech that's suppressed. And the left knows this damn well, which is why the left, when they hear about I'm a free speech activist, they that to them immediately is a dog whistle for pro-white speech, and they understand that. So, and I think so.
that's what's so ironic about this is they're constantly being attacked by the left when they try to do this, when they try to say, oh, hey, you know, we're not racist either, and we love freedom and the Constitution and so on and so forth. And the left is like, hey, this piece of paper you're talking about here was literally written by white supremacists, and the whole system is therefore white supremacist, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
and especially the Second Amendment as well, which is a thing they are very much in favor of. So, but they're not used to being pushed at from the right and from us saying the same thing. Like,
no.
Yeah.
No, they're used to. Yeah, well, we grant a lot of those points that the left makes. I mean, you know. I often say, like, quite often the left is right, but they're right for the wrong reasons. So, like, when they say, you know, Trump voters are kind of racist and the Trump voters go out of their way to deny this, it's actually kind of true, right? And then the same thing with like, oh, free speech activism is code for racism. They know that damn well because there's no other kind of speech that's actively suppressed because they're the ones doing the suppressing. They're like, what do you mean if you're free speech? The only kind of free speech that we suppress is racist speech, or what we call racist speech, which is pro-white speech or speech critical of non-white groups. That's the only kind of speech that we ourselves, the people that do the suppressing, that's what we suppress. We don't suppress any other kind of speech. So if you step up for free speech, you're just telling us that you're a racist. You know, I mean, that's how the left sees this. And like, these guys can't get that through their head. Like, nobody cares if they genuinely believed that you were just going out there for the Constitution, they wouldn't come and fight you. Now, one of the other things that it comes down to, really, and I always say that the litmus test for what's going to get Antifa out, which is why, and I think members of Antifa that think it's some kind of anti-capitalist organization or it's some kind of communist or anarchist thing should really think about this. Those of you that are listening, and I know there are some of you that are, you should really think about this. The only thing you ever get mobilized for is if a group is opposing open immigration. You never get mobilized to oppose people that advocate for capitalism. You never get mobilized. This is something a friend of mine pointed out the other week. You don't mobilize to disrupt the IDF fundraiser that gets held every month in New York City. There's a fundraiser every month for the Israeli Defense Force. You don't go to disrupt that. Why don't you go to disrupt that? The Israelis are a colonialist army that are battling like a third world people and displacing them off their land, and they're using, you know, first world military technology and violence in order to do it. And there's people that go and they give millions and millions of dollars to the Israeli military every month in New York City to do this, and you never go to disrupt that. Why don't you ever do that? Why don't you go disrupt some kind of libertarian meeting where these people are talking about unrestricted capitalism with absolutely no welfare for the poor? Why don't you go and disrupt that? No, you don't do it. The only thing you disrupt is people that start talking about closed borders, shutting down immigration. And you need those of you in Antifa that think you're part of a communist organization, that think you're not actually useful idiots for a system that you don't know what it is and don't understand. You should think about this.
The reason Antifa doesn't actually do that is they're too busy trying to figure out ways to make TRS more money. That's why.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah. Well, so I really think with the Oathkeepers, they're caught in this cuck mindset. They're just trapped in a cuck. They're just boomers. They can't stop. There's no hope for them. They're just boomers. They can never see things our way because they were brought up differently, and it's never gonna come. This shit is never gonna come to a head for them. You know, they were brought up in a white country with all these assumptions, and they still believe, a lot of them still exist in communities just with other boomers that they've known their whole lives. They don't know what's happening to the rest of us out here. They fundamentally don't get what's going on, and they see like, yeah, free speech, the Constitution. Well, now guess what? Those things are all racist, and they're going to be seen as such in the future, and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, and when you go to these events and you see these guys, the average age of these Oath Keepers is probably about 40, maybe even a little higher. And when we showed up to the Berkeley event, I would say the average age of the people there with IE was probably about maybe 21, 22. And there is this huge generational gap between us and them. I mean, you get a couple of guys who are younger. And actually, we actually had one of our guys out in Pennsylvania talking to a chapter out there, and they were actually pissed when they heard that Stuart Rhodes had been talking trash about IE.
Yeah,
So
I've heard that they did.
he's
have
alienating
pushback.
his younger base, his youth. Yeah.
Well, because the younger ones know what's going on, right? I mean, look, if they've gone to high school or college in the last 20 years, you know what the hell is going on. Like, I mean, it was bad when I was in high school. I'm old for this thing. It was bad when I was in high school. Same with Sven. Like, you know, when we were in high school, this shit was bad. I can only imagine what it's like now. How can you be? I mean, if you're a white person in an educational institution, you're just constantly under attack.
Mm-hmm.
Like constantly. You're just consistently attacked by the system, told that you're bad, told that you're evil, told that you don't have rights. And then they constantly talk about diversifying, which is just when they say that's just targeting you. I mean, if you're a white person in an institution, they talk about diversity, they're just targeting you for elimination from that institution. I mean, that's what they're doing. So, yeah.
So these Oathkeepers, I kind of associate that with like some late 90s moral majority throwback type thing. Like they've been around for a while, right?
It's relatively recent. It kind of came out when the Tea Party was happening. It's kind of like actually 2000s, really. I don't think they're around in the late 90s, but it's a phenomena that kind of went along with the Tea Party thing.
Yeah.
I think they were probably really involved with the. From my understanding, they were really involved with the Bundy Ranch whole thing that happened a while back.
I think they were involved in that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're very, I think, libertarian.
They're libertarians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of like boomer conservatarians, and most of them, a lot of them are ex-military and ex-police, which is why they. The oath that they're keeping is the oath to uphold the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. And I guess to them, to some of them at least, that would include us, although nothing that we do is actually unconstitutional. Everything we do is legally and constitutional protected. We do not break laws, nor are we interested in doing so. So, yeah. I mean, we couldn't do what we do in Europe. We can only do it here. Because we have the Constitution. So we do rag on it, but it does protect some things for us. I mean, that's not going to last. I mean, the only reason it does is because there's enough white people left in the country that respect it. But once that's gone, then it's all gone. And that's the thing, I think. That is, I think, the hardest thing. I think that's the hardest lesson for kind of boomers or really anybody that is a constitutionalist, libertarian, or sort of on the right generally. The hardest lesson is that these values you want to be universal are white values. And if you don't get that through your head and understand that you're not going to have this kind of liberty in a non-white majority society, then I don't know what to tell you. Like those liberties you cherish, which nobody wants to take from you. White nationalists don't want to take those liberties from you. They're going to be gone. You know, they're going to be gone.
I mean, I was literally raised like these people, basically. Like this is kind of my family's kind of in that, you know, conservative boomer mindset and stuff like that. And that's how I was raised. But I just, you know, just like you were saying, you can't be raised in this time period and not see those contradictions and not see how we're just being targeted out, and that the people coming here have very different cultures and see the world very differently than we do. And so it was clear as day to me, you know, very early on that this was not going to work. This whole my Constitution, my guns. You know, what's the point of all that if you can't even? What's the point of the First Amendment if you are punished for things you say that you?
Yeah, I mean, if you can be outcast from the economy for your speech, then the First Amendment doesn't really hold. It doesn't mean anything. If it's just, I mean, again, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about last episode too, where everything is radically separate. Like, First Amendment's not a cultural issue. Like we don't have a culture of free speech in America because we don't. We used to, but we don't anymore. Certainly, the culture is anti-free speech. It's anti-white. And it's just this technicality that it's not the government that punishes you, but the government doesn't need to punish you when every single corporation out there will immediately punish you for your speech. So what the hell, you know? And you know, the left actually, when the left didn't control the entire culture, when they didn't even control, you know, I mean, they started by controlling our vocabulary, and from there they controlled the entire culture. When they didn't, they managed to get people in the system that put legal safeguards for them in the system. Some of those are still there, and we can take advantage of them. Mm-hmm. But because now we're the dissidents. But, you know.
Oh, yeah. If you can get involved in a trade union that's got those workers' protections in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I know that helped Johnny out a lot. So, you know, there are these sort of remnants of this stuff going on. But it's like, yeah, I mean, the culture as a whole does not value free speech anymore. It's now just a legal technicality that the state can't punish you. But, like, who cares if every other institution can? So our culture has radically shifted, and it's radically shifted because of diversity. Because in the diverse society, the system, the managers, the managerial class, many of them Jews, but some non-Jews, they can't tolerate speech. They can't. What they call "quote unquote" hate speech is a social disruptive force. It's not something that they just want the system to go along equally. They want to bring in the cheap labor and have there be no sort of like no consequences to that. Like, oh, now we just have a greater pool of cheap labor. There's no social consequences. No, the natives certainly can't be pushing back against that because that's now hate speech, and so they have to control the whole vocabulary and the whole, and when they control, as Bob Whitaker said, another thing we were going to talk about, the death of Bob Whitaker. As Bob Whitaker used to say, if you control language, you control ideology. So by making us use their words, we make us think like them. And that's where these words like diversity, racism, etc., those words all come out of that desire to control us like that. And that's a desire to control a system because they want a system that is not rooted. They want a deracinated, multiracial, multicultural system where nobody has any roots. And therefore, everyone's just kind of a deracinated consumer. They're just an individual person that buys stuff, and there's nothing more to it than that.
Bob Whitaker was really insightful too, because that's really what's gotten a hold of people like Stuart Rhodes and many of these other boomers and oath keepers, is the fact that they have literally been conditioned by the language that was crafted by the left all over 100 years ago. I mean, some of this language is very old. And that has conditioned them to have this moral outlook of the world, like to the point where logic won't even work with these people. You cannot logically argue anything with them because they'll just experience cognitive dissonance and just not comprehend what you're saying.
And being boomers, they weren't raised on debate and shitposting on the internet the way we were. So we were, because we always had the internet, not always, but for a good amount of time, like we got used to discussion and debate. Like boomers didn't, they went to school, they were taught, and they just sort of, this obviously, not all boomers applies here, right? Like I don't think I always have to put that. Boomers. I don't have to put that as a footnote on everything. Bob Whitaker was a boomer, but like he was good. But like generally speaking, they are not conditioned to accept to debate. They're just not ready for it. They're not open. They're not open to it because they have been conditioned on this language. And I remember on the Sons of Confederate Veterans Facebook page after the first Charlottesville event, they put up a post, and I remember reading some of the comments. Like most of the comments were negative by far, but the few supportive comments. One person said, like, I'm so tired of these racists trying to hijack Confederate history. All races of people fought for the Confederacy. And I'm like, holy shit, that's the most reconstructed thing I've ever heard in my life.
There's actually a little bit more to that, though, because there have been instances where Confederate SCV groups have been sort of hijacked by Klan and white nationalist groups. So there's a little more to that.
Right, but I'm not talking about them complaining about. I'm saying the idea that they honestly have been convinced that all races fought for the Confederacy.
Right. That's
that is absurd.
They'll wax autistic with you and be like, "Well, there's Indians and
really
you got a few Confederate soldiers. See, look, yeah."
I mean, that's possibly even true, but
it's extremely.
The idea that like the one Indian that fought in the Confederate Army is like the most important guy. It's like, no. It's like,
you got to remember how happy they were just to have two black sons of Confederate veterans that would go to like their marches and parades.
Believe me, I've seen boomers. Look, dude, we used to troll on this with the Trump stuff. We'd have like people make fake black Trump supporter profiles, and we'd watch the boomers go absolutely nuts.
Yeah,
liking every single thing they ever wrote. Like, it was cruel, but it was also necessary. It was a necessary lesson. I mean, that's really where all the boomer posting came out of.
Oh man,
so these boomer pro Trump groups were.
Well, it's so strange too, because they're like always so afraid that they're gonna alienate these people. And I'm walking around Berkeley, I've got non-whites coming up to me, like, "Oh, hey, you're that guy. Like, can I take a picture with you?" Like Asian people, black people.
I was going to say it was Asians, all Asians. Racist Asians.
Yeah. So, I mean, I
mean, the best way to say these people's minds are controlled, and they are controlled with the language that they were taught as children. And yeah, you're right. This was stuff that, intellectual leftists and like Jewish psychologists, etc. Like, this is stuff that they've been working on. I mean, the whole idea that like controlling language controls idea, that's not even that's like Marxism. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying he's a Marxist. I'm saying like that's where he learned that from. Look, there's a lot to learn from these people when you read their own literature. They believe this stuff too. They know damn well what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Well, I don't even think like, memeing things into reality started with us. I think a good example is how many times I hear, left-wing people, cultural Marxists, so on and so forth, talk about hate speech is not free speech. They know damn well they're full of shit, but they're just going to keep saying it until one day it becomes real. One day, right. Some judge somewhere is all like, oh yeah, and everybody just goes along with it.
Yeah. No, they're doing, it's their version of a mantra, right?
Yeah.
And they want to, the real lie is when they pretend like that it's not legally protected the same way that any other speech is, when it is, but they say it in the context of like, I mean, people were even saying that about Berkeley events. You had boomer libs that were saying that. I'm like, you should know that there is no legal punishment for quote unquote hate speech. I mean, it's coming. If you think that it's not coming, you're wrong, because eventually they are simply either what happens is we exert enough pressure on the system or just take it over, or like we actually get crushed, and then just even expressing our ideas does get outlawed, and they'll try and figure out some way to do it. Now the current judiciary still, for whatever reason, respects the First Amendment, but I don't expect that to last, particularly as the country gets browner.
Right.
Yeah, I think Trump might have bought us some time, especially with some of his picks and whatnot. Might have bought us another decade or so, but it's coming if we don't get a hold on things fast. The good thing is that things are moving extraordinarily fast. Most of these boomers, let's face it, these people are middling IQ. That's why they can't think critically. And they're literally getting mowed over by the alt-right and what we're doing. And these guys, if they can't get on board, they're just going to get shoved out of the way. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really need boomer support. So, like, we want 20-year-olds. We want people in their teens and 20s. And 30s. We don't really need boomers, frankly. They're not going to do anything for us. If somebody agrees with us, that's great. But that's not where our activism is targeted by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, yeah. Well, also they're just gonna implode because white people do not like hypocrisy, and these guys' constituents, even if they don't fully agree with us, do not like hypocrisy. And so when they see their own leaders, guys like Stuart Rhodes and these other Oath Keepers, kicking out people out of free speech events, there's going to be a huge backlash. So anyone out there who is going to any of these, if there's a free speech event in your area, go to it, especially if you know that these guys are going to be there. And if you're not afraid of being out there and putting yourself out there as alt-right and even holding a sign that will get these people to try to kick you out, agitate agitate, because there was big backlash. Our guys up in Oregon said that after the Oath Keepers kicked them out, the media just swarmed them, and they were just, our guys there were getting nothing but interviews, and there was a big backlash against these guys. So
yeah. I mean, the other thing is, we do get media coverage, because I mean, even this stupid little thing with the name redacted company generated media coverage. Like, they want to know, like, what? Whoa, somebody advertised on your show? That's crazy. How did that happen? So it is. I think people have said, like, it's new, it's interesting. Like, the Oath Keepers aren't interesting, frankly.
No.
Like, no reporters go to try to interview them. Like, they're boring.
Yeah, so I had it confused. I was thinking of the Promise Keepers, which is a Christian group. That's the one I was thinking of.
I've gotten them confused in the past as well. No, Oath Keepers is not Promise Keepers. It's a different thing. Oath Keepers is a kind of a Tea Party thing that started with the Tea Party, and it's ex-military and police that go, like, to defend. They went to one thing that should tip you off a little bit about Oath Keepers. They went to Ferguson during the rioting there. And it was not clear what they were doing. Some of them were there to protect property from the rioters, which they were unsuccessful at doing.
Yeah.
Complete fail.
But they showed up. They showed up to signal that that's what they were about, right? I mean, that's what matters.
Yeah, they showed the signal, but they didn't actually. I mean, maybe they saved a couple.
I'm kind of skeptical that. I'm actually kind of skeptical that they went just to signal that that's what they were doing. To be honest, I don't think they're that bright, but I don't think they're that dumb either. And to be honest, I think they really thought that something might be cracking off, and they were kind of using that as an excuse to go be there and try to take control of the situation. Had a revolution kicked off. I personally think that's what they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they were expecting some big blow up to happen. The other thing, though, that they said that they were doing was they were there to protect protesters from like unlawful use of force by police.
Oh, jeez.
Like, this is something I distinctly remember that they said. So, like, we're going to protect property, but we're also going to make sure that the police don't crack down too hard on these people. So, of course, like, black mobs rioting, burning, looting, destroying property deserves the protection of the Oath Keepers, just in case one of the people in this mob isn't committing a crime and the police crack down on them. Yeah, like, we have to be shut down for showing up to peaceful events just to speak our minds. And of course, the events are peaceful. The events are peaceful unless Antifa attacks them because we're white and we don't riot. So.
Yeah, Antifa's the real fascist, right, Mike?
No. I mean,
they're not just fascists, though. They're fascist enablers now.
Yeah.
Yeah, now they're helping us. Please, by all means, like, do more to get us money. And if
I want more money.
Really did us a solid there.
Find a way to get PayPal to, like, refund the fees.
Yes. See if you can get our pen pals to refund our fees.
Our
yes.
pen pals.